Today is difficult. Tomorrow is much more difficult. The day after tomorrow is beautiful. Most people die tomorrow evening.
Before he built Alibaba into Asia's unstoppable commerce giant, Jack Ma was a broke English teacher who kept failing the exams that were supposed to define his future. Before he became a global symbol of modern China's ambition, he was rejected again and again by ordinary jobs. Before his name stood beside the world's most powerful executives, he stood on a stage in 2020 and publicly criticized the financial system. And after that moment, the most visible billionaire in China began to vanish from the spotlight, leaving one question hanging in the air. What happens when success meets a line you're not allowed to cross? As always, welcome back to Fame Origins, the place where we uncover the untold beginnings behind the world's most influential figures. Today, we explored Jack Ma, not as China's most famous billionaire, but as a man shaped by repeated rejection, quiet insecurity, and an unshakable belief that nearly broke him. His rise was not just a story of entrepreneurship, but of survival inside a system with invisible limits. Behind the speeches, the smiles, and the empire lies a private cost few ever see. And the truth behind it reveals far more than success ever could. Jack Ma was born in 1964 in Hangzhou, a quiet city long before it became a global tech hub. His family was ordinary, with no political influence or financial advantage. From an early age, Jack Ma struggled in school, especially with mathematics, a weakness that would follow him for years. While other students advanced smoothly through China's highly competitive education system, he repeatedly fell behind, failing critical exams that determined social mobility and future security. As a teenager, Jack Ma became fascinated with the outside world. He would ride his bicycle to hotels frequented by foreign tourists, offering free tours of the city just to practice English. It wasn't ambition in the traditional sense, it was curiosity mixed with insecurity, a quiet awareness that he needed something different to survive. English became his escape route, not because he excelled naturally, but because persistence was his only option. That persistence was tested again and again. Jack Ma failed the university entrance exam multiple times before finally being accepted into a teacher's college, a path considered modest and unremarkable in China at the time. Even after graduation, rejection continued. He applied to dozens of jobs, from police departments to fast food restaurants, and was turned away almost every time. At one KFC location, he was the only applicant not hired. These early failures shaped more than his resume, they shaped his worldview. Jack Ma learned early that the system did not reward him easily, and that waiting for approval was pointless. He developed resilience not as a motivational slogan, but as a survival mechanism. Long before success entered his life, rejection had already taught him the one lesson that would define everything that followed. If no door opens for you, you either wait forever or build your own. After graduating, Jack Ma settled into what many would have considered a safe ending to a difficult youth. He became an English teacher. The pay was low, the future predictable, and the social status modest. Yet beneath that stability was a growing restlessness. Teaching paid the bills, but it did nothing to silence the feeling that he was falling behind a world that was moving faster every year. During the mid-1990s, Jack Ma's life quietly changed during a trip outside China, where he encountered the internet for the first time. Curious, he searched for basic information about China and found almost nothing. That absence struck him harder than any rejection letter ever had. To Jack Ma, it wasn't just a technical gap, it was proof that China was invisible in a digital world that was rapidly taking shape without it. He returned home obsessed. With no background in computers or programming, he began experimenting with online directories and simple websites, relying entirely on instinct and persuasion rather than technical skill. Early attempts failed quickly, draining what little money he had and reinforcing doubts from those around him. Friends questioned his judgment, family members worried he was chasing illusions, but Jack Ma had already spent a lifetime being underestimated. Skepticism no longer surprised him. These years hardened him in a different way. He learned how to convince people when he had no proof, how to sell ideas before results existed, and how to tolerate uncertainty without collapsing under it. Unlike traditional entrepreneurs, Jack Ma wasn't driven by precision or control. He was driven by belief. Belief that opportunity favored those willing to move before permission was granted. By the late 1990s, that belief was no longer theoretical. With a small group of supporters and almost no safety net, Jack Ma stood at the edge of a decision that would either confirm every doubt ever cast on him or rewrite his place in history forever. In 1999, Jack Ma gathered 18 people inside his small apartment in Hangzhou and pitched an idea that sounded unrealistic, even reckless. He wanted to build an online platform that connected Chinese manufacturers directly with buyers around the world. There was no proven business model, no advanced technology, and almost no funding. What he did have was conviction and an unusual ability to make others believe when logic said they shouldn't. Alibaba's early days were brutal. The company burned cash quickly, competitors with stronger technical teams appeared almost immediately, and China's internet infrastructure was still underdeveloped. Jack Ma was not a programmer, and he openly admitted it. Instead, he positioned himself as a leader and storyteller, selling a vision of what China's digital future could become. For years, survival, not growth, was the primary goal. The turning point came when international investors began paying attention. SoftBank's Masayoshi Son famously invested millions after meeting Jack Ma for only minutes, convinced more by his clarity of belief than by financial projections. That capital gave Alibaba oxygen. Slowly, the platform expanded, gaining trust among small businesses that had long been ignored by traditional systems. As China's economy accelerated, Alibaba rose with it. Taobao reshaped domestic e-commerce, Alipay transformed digital payments, and Jack Ma became the public face of innovation in a rapidly modernizing nation. Failures still came. Pricing wars, regulatory pressure, and constant competition, but each battle reinforced Alibaba's dominance rather than weakening it. By the early 2010s, Jack Ma was no longer just an entrepreneur, he was a symbol. His speeches blended humor, philosophy, and optimism, turning him into one of the most recognizable business figures on the planet. In 2014, Alibaba's IPO in New York became one of the largest in history, instantly elevating Jack Ma into the global billionaire class. Yet behind the celebration, something subtle shifted. With scale came scrutiny. With influence came visibility far beyond commerce. Jack Ma's voice carried weight, not just in business, but in culture and thought. The empire he built had succeeded beyond its original mission, placing him in a position few entrepreneurs ever reach, where success itself begins to change the rules of the game. The shift came quietly, but its impact was immediate. In late 2020, Jack Ma delivered a speech criticizing China's financial regulators, calling the traditional banking system outdated and restrictive to innovation. To global audiences, the remarks sounded like typical Silicon Valley-style disruption rhetoric. Inside China, however, they crossed an invisible boundary. Within days, the consequences began to unfold. Ant Group's highly anticipated IPO, expected to be one of the largest in history, was abruptly suspended. Regulatory scrutiny intensified, not only on Ant, but on Alibaba itself. Investigations followed, fines were issued, expansion plans slowed. The message was clear, even if it was never stated openly. What made the situation unsettling was not the punishment, but the silence that followed. Jack Ma vanished from public view. Scheduled appearances were canceled. Media mentions became rare. For months, there were no speeches, no interviews, no explanations. In a digital age where visibility equals power, his absence spoke louder than any official statement. Speculation filled the vacuum. Some believed he was being disciplined. Others suggested strategic retreat, a calculated decision to survive by stepping out of the spotlight. There was no confirmation, only fragments, a brief sighting abroad, a low-profile appearance months later, carefully neutral and restrained. What was undeniable was the transformation. Jack Ma did not lose his wealth overnight, nor was his empire dismantled, but something far more valuable had been taken away: his freedom to speak openly. The conflict revealed a truth rarely discussed in success stories. Power is not absolute, and influence has limits that are often only discovered after they've been crossed. At his peak, Jack Ma stood at the center of one of the most powerful business ecosystems ever built in Asia. Alibaba was no longer just an e-commerce company. It had become a digital infrastructure shaping how millions of people shopped, paid, borrowed, and built businesses. His personal fortune soared into the tens of billions, placing him among the richest individuals in the world, while his influence extended far beyond balance sheets. Globally, Jack Ma was celebrated as a symbol of possibility, a former teacher who proved that innovation did not belong exclusively to Silicon Valley. He spoke at international forums, advised world leaders, and inspired a generation of entrepreneurs who saw his story as proof that origin did not determine destiny. Within China, he represented ambition aligned with modernization, a rare public figure who combined charisma with commercial success. Yet this peak looked different from the outside than it did from within. Public appearances became more measured. His tone shifted from bold prediction to careful reflection. While Alibaba continued operating at massive scale, Jack Ma himself stepped back from day-to-day leadership, officially retiring from executive roles and redirecting attention toward education and philanthropy. On paper, this was the definition of success: wealth, legacy, and global recognition. But beneath it lay a quieter reality, one where achievement no longer guaranteed freedom, and where maintaining stability mattered more than expanding influence. The summit had been reached, but standing there required a different kind of restraint than the climb itself. The legacy of Jack Ma is complicated, and that complexity is exactly what makes it enduring. He reshaped global e-commerce, empowered millions of small businesses, and proved that world-changing companies could emerge far from traditional power centers. For many, he remains a symbol of perseverance, a reminder that failure does not disqualify ambition. Yet his story also leaves behind unanswered questions. Can innovation truly exist without constraint? Is influence ever permanent or only borrowed? In recent years, Jack Ma has appeared intermittently, focusing on education and research, carefully distant from the empire that once defined him. His future may no longer involve public leadership, but his impact is already embedded in the systems he helped build. What remains is not just a business legacy, but a cautionary tale about success, voice, and the invisible boundaries that shape them both. Jack Ma's story is often told through symbols of success: Alibaba's dominance, record-breaking IPOs, and the rise of China's digital economy. But behind those milestones lies a far more fragile legacy: a man who spent his life defying rejection, only to discover that some victories come with boundaries no ambition can erase. After stepping away from Alibaba's leadership and disappearing from public view, Jack Ma's focus quietly shifted. Education, rural development, and personal reflection replaced keynote speeches and global stages. To some, it looked like a graceful retreat; to others, a forced silence. In reality, it marked a deeper transformation, a man redefining purpose after learning that influence does not equal immunity. Jack Ma's achievements are undeniable. He empowered millions of small businesses, reshaped global e-commerce, and became a symbol of possibility for those who started with nothing. Yet his journey also exposed uncomfortable truths about power, control, and the limits placed on even the most successful voices. His personal history, repeated failure, relentless belief, sudden restraint, reminds us that greatness is rarely simple. The same courage that built an empire also pushed him into dangerous territory. The same confidence that inspired millions ultimately required restraint to survive. In the end, Jack Ma leaves behind a legacy both inspiring and cautionary, proof that success can change systems, but it cannot change the rules, and that sometimes survival means knowing when to step out of the spotlight. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the origins behind one of the world's most influential figures, be sure to subscribe to Fame Origins for more stories that reveal what lies beneath the spotlight. Let us know in the comments who you want to see next, and we'll uncover the journey behind their rise.